certiorari. Any appeal must be filed within 60 days after entry of a final decision by the board. Any person or other entity considering an appeal should consult with an attorney to ensure that time and procedural requirements are met.
All right. And do we have a quorum?
Yes.
All right. We have public comment as number 6 on the item on the list, but we're going to move it down to number 12. And we will deal with that at a later item on the agenda. Approval of the minutes. Got a motion?
Move the approval of the minutes.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, the minutes been approved. This is the ending of the year, and we're going to be under new leadership in 2026. We've been asking for quite a bit for this board to have certain items where they increase their budget, where they can hire new people. And we're going to continue to support that. And the second item we been for the board is a vehicle. Most of the department have a metro vehicle to transport. It doesn't make sense for our staff to wear out their vehicle going from one place to another, carrying supplies and equipment to put on meetings and stuff in the community. If other departments have, certainly so can we. And we're going to continue to ask for that. I look at this board as very favorable for the community. That's the reason why they voted for independent investigation opinion about complaints. They don't have to just believe what the police department say, because sometimes them things might shoot a carry ball on. They want someone that they can trust and shoot straight with them. And the people that fought so hard for this and people that voted for this board, continue, we need your support. If the board is not getting what they need, then you need to reflect it when you go to the polls to vote. If that person is not supporting this board, then we need to replace them. And stay in touch with the board, and don't hesitate to feel free to call the office and make sure that if you got a complaint, don't hesitate, and they'd be willing to look into it as soon as possible. I couldn't give you exact date and time. They have to do some research on what took place to give you an answer about back to you, but have faith they would do their job to the best of their ability, and I appreciate that. We'll be under new leadership, and we're due to have an election. And I've been advising since October and November, people running for office to submit their names into Director Jill Fisher so that they can put it on a ballot. And I don't know if anyone has done it yet, but hopefully that you will. If not, then we're going to have to point fingers, People will have to step up to the plate. It's just a few of us, just 7 of us. But you got to show the people that we are here to represent, and we're going to do what need to be done. And that's as much as I have right now. But I appreciate the board working with me this year as being the chairman, and I appreciate being on the board for 7 years. And so I'm sure they would do whatever they need to do to keep the faith and keep doing what they need to do. And I'm not going to be like somebody else that was on the board said, call me, I'll help you when I can, but he didn't help you when he was on here. But I've been doing my best to do whatever I can for you. I've been a fighter. enough with that. Anyway, let's get on with this meeting here. The next item that we will go with is the Executive Director's report.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for those words of encouragement, Mr. Holloway. You have been a fighter and a staunch supporter of this board and me personally. I appreciate you. So starting off, we have, of course, he alluded to the 2 current members rolling off the board, and then we have 2 new members being appointed, and they'll be that's going to take place until tomorrow. Apparently, on December the 4th, when they, I guess, did their, I was under the impression that they were going to appoint them on that day, but they changed the system a little bit, and so they kind of put an extra date in between that time. So on December the 4th, they had their hearing or I'm sorry, interview or something like that. But anyway, so it will be tomorrow for the appointment. If they're appointed, then we'll meet them, and I'm assuming at that moment, then we would have to make new elections as officers in January, because that's not. I mean, that's not something that's on the agenda, and nobody put their name in.
Right. That's why I was saying they need to submit their name to you this month, because we've had time to do that, and we got to move forward. We got to hit the boost running.
Yeah, we do.
2026. So
right, for January.
For January, yeah.
Okay. All right, and then I'll get with you on like what that procedure should look like. Okay, thank you. All right, and so, of course, I've been meeting with the Chief of Operations and Performance and the Mayor's Office, Kristen Wilson. We have a meeting monthly. We received a good number of applications from the HR department, and we're in the process of reviewing those and trying to set up interviews. We've had a couple people put in their resignations, and so we are going to be filling those spots, and so we are on the move. How many? I don't know. It's a lot of applications. So it was it was a huge number. And so we're looking forward to getting that process started and getting those people in place as quickly as possible. This month we received, since our last board meeting, and you have to excuse me, I know I'm talking a little low, but I was under the weather a little bit. So anyway, since our last meeting in November, we've received 11 civilian complaints. So that number kind of shot back up from the month of November, where I think we only had 2 or 3. And so that's why we need to make certain that we get some people hired in our office. All right, and so we received, and I sent those to you, 7 responses from the chief for the month of December. And so I didn't know if you wanted to discuss any of those. There was one in there in particular that I also attached, the CRR, where he disagreed with our recommendations. And so, that's his prerogative, although I didn't think that it was, it didn't, in my opinion, it didn't address the totality of the circumstances with that particular complaint. And so if you guys want to talk about it, we can. But that was, I think that there was a huge opportunity to have some correction there in the direction that the department went with their recommendation. And so I personally disagree with it. But I just wanted to put that on the record. If you guys want to discuss it, we can.
Yes, we need to discuss it.
Okay, do you want to do it now?
I'm sorry. Defer to the chair.
Okay.
Board member Cersei, go ahead.
Yes.
You got the mic turn on.
Yeah, I can get it. It's my opinion that we should discuss it.
Okay.
And I'd offer a motion to that effect.
The motion is to,
Discuss the chief's response.
okay, do we have a second? All in favor say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, the motion passes and we'll discuss it with the chief.
Okay. So if we look at this case, this is case 2024-043, and this was a case where an officer, we received a complaint from an officer, from a detective from Clarksville, Tennessee, and he was working a case that involved a sexual it was a civilian suspect that he had contacted in relation to some type of sexual offense. And so he contacted that particular suspect who was in Davidson County, I'm assuming at the time, or maybe not, but he was on the phone with, so I'll start at the top. And this particular detective had contacted that person who I didn't name. I put the name as DT here, but he had contacted this suspect and said, hey, I need you to come to the Clarksville Police Department. I want to ask you a few questions about an allegation against you. And he initially left a message, and then that DT person, the suspect, called him back. So he had a conversation with him, and he said, what is this about? And the officer said, well, I can't disclose that on the telephone. Why don't you come on down? And at that point, their conversation ended based on the complaint that we received. And then what he did was the suspect I'm talking about, he contacted his friend who was who worked with the Partners in Care, and contacted that woman and asked her, does it seem, strange that a person would be calling me on my personal cell phone, asking me to come down to the police department and answer questions? And so then they involved an MMPD officer, and that MMPD officer decided to contact that detective by telephone based on these allegations here we've already went over. And when he did that, the officer called him and left him a message. But in that message, he told the detective in Clarksville that, hey, you called my number. And when you called my number, you left a message, and I'm just calling you back. But that wasn't true. The phone number that he received, that the detective contacted, was this suspect. It was not the police officer's number. And so the police officer from MMPD contacted that officer again, and the detective, and that detective was not available. And just a short time later, he went into a database and looked up the officer's personal cell phone number. And he contacted him on the personal cell phone number. And the officer said, answered the line and was like, well, who is this? And he told him who he was. And he asked him some questions that the detective thought was inappropriate. And at that point, they concluded their conversation, and the detective got with his superior officers, and they filed a complaint against this MMPD officer. And this officer said that the suspect was sitting in the car with him. He told two things that were untruths. The first one was, he said that the detective contacted his personal cell phone number, which was not true. The second thing that he alleged was that this suspect, was sitting in the car next to him. And that suspect was not. He was on a third-party line. He was on like a phone, on a speaker. And so for what the response from the chief says about this case is, the factors contributing to this decision are the case has been thoroughly reviewed as requested by the NCRB. During the review, it was clear the officer used investigative techniques to solicit information when investigating a potential crime. Those techniques sometimes include not making a subject aware of who they are speaking with and who may be present. The officer withholding information of how he obtained the number, who he was, and who was present was an investigative technique to elicit the response of a potential suspect. I don't know how that coincides with this entire allegation. I will say that this potentially sex offense suspect stated that he thought that the officer, who identified himself as an officer, was scamming him. And so, none of it makes sense. But at the end of the day, I don't believe that this response fully takes into consideration the totality of the circumstances that were alleged and then the recommendations from the board.
And what was the chief's response?
That's what I just read, that one. You want me to read it again? Yeah, non-acceptance.
Any board member has any comments on the board member Wynn?
I have a couple of questions. I'm trying to process it. I read through this complaint, and this was kind of confusing.
Right.
We've seen it before, though, haven't we? Haven't we seen this complaint in some form before? Is this the first time we've seen it?
Yeah, it's the first time.
Okay. So my question, a couple of questions, is to make sure I'm clear on this. So Clarksville PD is working a sex crime. They notify a suspect. The suspect is a supposed friend of an MPD officer.
Well, of a partners in care, someone who works in the mental health profession that's actually working with the MMPD officer.
Okay, so a friend of a friend.
Correct.
So he unofficially calls Clarksville to find out whether it's legit,
Correct.
and he determines that it is.
Well, he does, because the officer in Clarksville is kind of like, why are you calling me about this?
Right.
Yes.
So
And I transcribed it if you
I
want me to
read it.
read
No,
it.
I
Yeah.
read it.
Okay.
I read it. And so did anybody in staff, your staff, contact the Clarksville detective about this?
Yeah, it was Daniel Yoon's case, and he talked to the detective, and so we have all of his notes as well.
And what was the result of that conversation? That he said the officer lied to him? Did the Clarksville detective accuse our officer here of lying
That's
to him?
correct. That's what this allegation is about. Yeah, he sent in the allegation that and it was 2 pages long.
So, do we know what happened with the criminal case in the Clarksville investigation?
No. Mm-mm.
So we don't know whether they arrested this guy in Nashville for sex crimes in Clarksville.
No, I don't know.
So when the chief responded to the complaint from the Clarksville Police Department, did we have that formal response?
No, it was OPA that contacted him, and and we have that recorded information as well.
So OPA didn't work their case, right? Work their complaint,
Yes,
and we have their response saying that the officer didn't do anything wrong.
that's correct.
Okay, all right. No, those are my questions. So, in your investigation, was there any reason why the Metro officer didn't contact a sex crimes investigator here about this case, or he just chose to do it just to check to see if this was a legitimate inquiry from Clarksville Police Department?
That's pretty much all that they had in their file. Yes, and I wasn't sure. I didn't get too deep into the sex crime itself because I'm just doing a review of OPA's investigation, and I didn't think that it was a necessary step for us to get involved in that, because I was listening to what the officer said and also what he wrote in. I'm talking about the Clarksville officer, and I also listened to what the officer who was assisting this DT person. I listened to that multiple times. That's why I transcribed it, because it was incredible. The things that I was hearing, I don't understand why this conversation was happening. And so, and the fact that this alleged suspect was acting as if he didn't know what the officer in Clarksville had stated, although the officer spoke with the Clarksville police detective himself.
So you think the suspect was manipulating our officer to get him to speak for him to the Clarksville Police Department? Is that what you think?
He may have been. I mean, to try to get around not going and turning himself in or talking to the detective when he, and he also said that he talked to his attorney, and his attorney, that's what he said throughout the conversation, that he talked to his attorney because he was trying to fish around to determine whether or not this was about a drunk driving or something. Right. And the detective said, I don't think that they would want you to come down for a drunk driving. All of that is in my transcription.
Right. No, all right. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Any more comments from the board? Questions? Alicia?
So, this is a pretty new process that we are going through in terms of the review board and non-acceptance of our findings. And so, between, Attorney Brazil and Director Fitchard, what would be the next step in terms of, a non-acceptance of a case like this?
Yeah, I mean, that part, we haven't had, but I think maybe this is the first one. Mm-hmm. And we haven't really worked that out. I was looking back to see what the law said about the non-acceptance. I think you have to just send it back with the remarks on it, is what it said. And, that's pretty much it. I'm going to get to that section. Hold on one second. So it says, if the director finds that an investigation is not complete under whatever subdivision here, the committee, by a majority vote of its members, can A, request the chief of police of the municipality to conduct a further investigation of the incident, specifying that additional information is needed, or B, direct the executive director to further investigate the incident. And then 3, of course, it says the executive director shall report any additional investigative findings made to the committee, and upon completion of its inquiry, the committee shall report its written findings and conclusions to the chief of police of the municipality, the mayor, and the municipal governing body.
Okay, to the board, you heard the 3 different things that we probably could do on that. So do we get a motion on one of those 3?
So we need to include that in our interview. Okay.
Sorry.
Attorney, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And Member Haddock, it's worth noting that under our current MOU, there is no additional procedure when we receive non-acceptance. It's kind of as it's written currently, it's kind of the end of story. So it's a great point that we don't really have a codified procedure for what happens next.
Yeah. So we just probably need to set that up immediately.
Yeah, so it looks...
add it into the MOU.
Yeah, excuse me, I'm sorry.
That's what they read pal for, Alicia. Go ahead.
So I think would be the next step, because if we're looking at this particular case, and we believe that what we submitted to the chief is accurate, it is correct, and it would open up for MNPD to really look at some of the practices that could possibly be happening among its officers. I think it would be best for the CRB to figure out and codify what would come next, because just saying that the chief doesn't accept it, it should not be the end of the story. Right. So what would be the next steps if that is meeting with MNPD's attorney or Director Fitchard? You working with OPA to really talk about and the chief. I'm sorry, what this looks like, because I doubt this will be the only case that we'll ever see come back and it not be accepted. So we may as well go ahead and determine what those next steps would be. If that is, because I know we have an option to send it to the mayor, to the council. I mean, we're going to do that anyway, but who's responsible? So once it comes from the chief's desk, should it go back to OPA for further investigation and then back to the CRB? I mean, whatever this would work
Well,
best.
it gives an or. So it can go to the chief of police to conduct a further investigation, and then it says or direct the executive director for further investigate the incident. So I guess that would be something that you guys would make a decision on.
Okay, board member Sexton, go ahead.
And then Wetzel.
Notwithstanding the fact that we apparently don't have a policy at the moment, that should not dissuade us from engaging the chief regardless.
Yeah.
In fact, if we don't have a policy to do it, that means we also don't have a policy not to do it. So that I would move that the executive engage the chief on this matter, and because his turn down is just simply not satisfactory. There's no basis offered for it. He just seems to have determined without offering a reason why he's done this.
Let me get Sean, and then I get you.
Thank you, Chair. So what I'm thinking about is the chief talked about the techniques used, that this was simply a technique. Where is it in black and white that this technique could be used to investigate? Like, is that something that you can speak to, Member Nguyen? And also, I'm thinking about, it wasn't like this officer received these orders from a higher up to look into this thing. This came from a friend of a friend. So why is he making calls on behalf of a friend of a friend? Right? There's no, to me, that seems unprofessional as well. So that's
going into the database.
Yes, and going into the database, like abuse of the resources that he has at his disposal. So I'm curious to hear Member Nguyen speak on that, if you would.
Let me get Attorney Brazil, and then I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Chair. And another point in line with Member Witzel's point, the language currently, as it's written in our MOU, Section C states that upon receipt of recommendations or a noted deficiency from the CRB, the Chief of Police agrees to review and provide a written response within 45 calendar days. Such response should include, but should not be limited to, acceptance, partial acceptance, or non-acceptance of the recommendations, a statement of reasons for the department's decision, and a description of actions taken by the department in response to the recommendations, including any factual, legal, or policy issues affecting the department's decision-making process. So in the event that we do see non-acceptance, even still, there should be a basis that explores these enumerated tests in C. And I don't think we have that here. It's limited to the techniques employed are okay.
Okay, Board Member Nguyen, you had a comment?
Yeah, to your question, it's not unusual, I don't think, for anybody to ask a friend who's a police officer to inquire to another police department about anything. So that's not unusual, or ask advice. But my concern is we don't know all the details of this case. We know a lot, but not all. Is that he's got a potential sex offender, according to the Clarksville Police Department. Correct. Asking for help, which stands out to me as problematic, especially what we know about sex offenders. And if we've got a sex offender in Davidson County, if I'm saying a lot of ifs here, if that's what's going on here, then if I were counseling with this officer, I would have him contact the sex crimes unit and say, someone inquired from the Clarksville Police about this guy being a sex offender, because sex offenders just don't offend in one place. They rape everywhere. That's how they operate. So, I mean, I'm not trying to make it out to be something that's not, but it just seems odd to me. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about how we deal with this, because it's not an MOU. At what point do you ask the OPA director for you and him to sit down and for you to share your concerns about the disagreement that the chief voiced to us about our decision? In other words, have you had a conversation with him saying, look, I understand what you're saying, but here's our point that we think the officer was dishonest? Does that happen? Is that a process that goes on?
We haven't done that, no, because we haven't encountered that, of course.
Yeah.
And the reason why I think that maybe this would elicit that, but I also think that, like, this case borders, I mean, this is egregious behavior, in my opinion. Not only the dishonesty, but just the whole subject matter of it.
No, and I agree. My question then is that wouldn't it warrant then you notifying OPA and saying, look, we have to have a meeting about this, because this is not, some administrative issue. This is now got connections to a possible crime, and we'd like to have a discussion about how important we think it is that this be looked at. I mean, again, I'm not elevating it to something that's not, but are you and your staff willing to meet with the OPA?
Yeah, I'm always willing to meet with OPA. I mean, of course, they're not going to, I mean, they said that this was all unfounded. And
Right.
so, I mean, I feel like sometimes that would, I don't have a problem meeting with them.
Right.
But once they've already made a conclusion of unfounded, I mean, we would have to go from scratch, because I don't understand how they even got to that. And that's why I said in this particular conclusion that, and then if you talk about what unfounded means that it was a completely false.
Right.
It was made up. It wasn't real.
Right.
And we know that that's not true. We know for certain that a detective in Clarksville filed a complaint against an MMPD officer based on this information that he has. So to get to the conclusion of unfounded doesn't even make sense.
So
There's no way that they could have gotten to unfounded if they had done an investigation.
So I agree with, but my question, if I were the OPA chief, and you felt that way, or we felt that way, that there was a big mistake made in the decision, instead of putting it in a policy, which we could do, why not just have a meeting and say, look, here's what I think about this. We've looked at the case. Can you explain why you decided that this wasn't warranted, that it was unfounded instead of a serious case? Is that something?
I'm willing to do that. That's not.
Okay.
That's
Thank
never
you.
going to be an issue.
Thank you.
Attorney Mazzetti, you have a question?
No, just a point, and in that discussion that could happen, we could direct. It would be appropriate to direct that this non-acceptance requires more, that if it were explained, we would understand what policy they considered in making that decision, the factual and legal. The problem is not necessarily the conclusion is that we don't have enough to even understand if it's appropriate. So I think what we have may be sufficient if it were followed in this instance. If they laid out everything that happened in the non-acceptance, maybe we wouldn't be here.
I'm listening to you, and you say something. This happened to be a complaint about an MPD and Metro police officer. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Well, that still put us in the ball game. That's one of our staff. That's one of our employees. If I'm correct or not, I believe somebody just got executed about a sexual assault in the state of Tennessee. This is just like turning the light on. There could be a problem somewhere if they don't further look into this situation. And so,
Well, I appreciate that, because the thing here, if you looked at my recommendations, I did enumerate what the investigation, OPA's investigation, lacked. Number one, it lacked an interview with the witness, who was the CIT worker or the Partners in Care worker. This person was a friend of the suspect and present during the contact with the complainant and privy to the conversation between this suspect and the officer. She could have provided more information. They could have interviewed the suspect for more information. And then overall, more investigation should have been conducted regarding the allegation into what Detective Horton said from Clarksville. And I said that OPA's investigation relied heavily on the testimony of the MMPD officer, the accused officer. They didn't talk to anyone else. They did talk to the detective in Clarksville, but those other two witnesses who were involved in this, they did not, or I didn't have any recording. And he also, abruptly, his body-worn camera footage shuts off in the middle of this conversation. And then they said, oh yeah, that's a small part. You know, he did turn his camera off. That's not a small part. That's a big part.
so do we get a motion from the board? What shall we do in this situation?
Well, I would ask the chair a motion to have Director Fisher check back in with OPA and have plan a meeting on this case in particular about, like our counsel just said, about what were the reasonings for dismissing this case or calling them unfounded. Because as I sit here and think about this, as having been a criminal investigator, if I had a case like this and I got a phone call from a police officer from another jurisdiction, from a possible suspect, it has possibility of swaying my focus in that investigation, because this person who I think is a suspect now has a police officer calling on their behalf. So whether the officer meant to do it or not, whether there was intention. So this is a little bit more serious, I think, than just dishonesty about who said what. I think this is something a little more. It could be. It could be. Now, again, we don't know all the information or what they did or what they didn't do. I mean, you've told us what the people who they didn't talk to, but maybe they don't see it the way we see it, that the gravity of the case could be much greater than this, which would warrant you to have a meeting. So I would like to pass a motion that Director Fisher have a meeting with OPA Director about this case to find out all the details and report back to us on another date.
Do we get a second?
Second. And I offer an amendment.
Okay, the amendment?
Yes. Director Fisher meet with the chief, not the OPA. You accept?
I accept that. Oh, okay. And I would second the amendment if that's what it needs to be done, because that's what I was going to include, that this needs to be sent back to the chief, and the chief should send this back to OPA in terms of, because the case is closed. And so, I mean, Attorney Brazil, you can give us guidance on a process, but it sounds like if it's closed and it's gone to the chief, then the chief is the one who we need to speak with. But I do hear your point about meeting with OPA and discussing it, but I think that probably should have happened before we even sent the findings to the chief, if that was if that's how we felt about the case.
Point of order.
Oh, point of order, go ahead.
Yeah. We have a second from
Yeah, you got the second.
from Mark. Yeah.
Okay, you hear the motion and the amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, the motion passes. The next item on the agenda, okay.
Oh, can I say one thing? And that in that it includes all the things that you list, that Attorney Brazil listed, that he just read off. Is that what we're saying? Just like the policy and all the things that they have not turned in. Sure. Yeah.
Yes, a description of what we, yes.
Okay.
Chair, can I say one more thing as well?
Yes.
We also have to keep in mind that the CRB presented a zero tolerance sexual misconduct policy, and it was accepted by MNPD. And so with this, I think there's direct correlation of the work that we've already been doing, but then also what it looks like in action, and how it is not only was it accepted, but how it's enforced. So I think that has to be a part of it, Attorney Brazil and the Executive Director Fitcher, in terms of our response to the chief and what we need to make a determination of what's a sufficient case, especially as it pertains to sexual assault and sexual misconduct.
That's a very good point that you made. It varies sometimes who you know and what you know in the police department, who you have good connection with, you know. And I've seen cases where a person gets suspended for one thing, but another person can come along and do the same thing and not get suspended. And so we have to make sure all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, you know. And you have to handle business like it should be, no matter who it is, because if it come up later, and it could cost you a lot more if you had not done the job like you should have.
And let Attorney Brazil touch the base on that. And then I just wanted to really quickly say, budget season is around the corner. We have to, so the committee met, reviewed just the department's budgets as they are currently, and our financials. Myself and the budget, the people in the office that handle the budget will prepare a budget, draft budget proposal. And then in our meeting in January, our executive committee meeting, we can discuss that, and hopefully it will be voted upon to bring to the board meeting in January so that you guys get to see it before budget gets put into the system, which is mid-February. And so we usually are a little bit behind that because we're working on the budget, and then they give us a deadline to get it put in, and you guys haven't seen it. And so hopefully this new process that we have will give you opportunity to review it, and let's have a discussion about it in January. And if any changes come about at the January meeting, then you can add those into there. And hopefully it'll be, we need more money. Okay, so, but anyway, I'll present that to you in January's meeting, and also I'll have it prepared in advance for the executive meeting in January as well.
It is not perhaps you need more money. You need more money. You always need more money. Each year, the cost of living goes up. Everything gets more expensive. So you never say if. You do need more money.
Okay.
Board Member Sessions.
Having attended
Yes.
the budget meeting with staff, it's clear to me that we really need to circulate the budget determinations before, even before the executive committee meeting, to the entire board. Yes. So even if we make some modifications later, they'll still have a good opportunity to look at what's coming forth, and in time to be seasonably ready for the presentation of Metro.
Okay. Yeah. All right, absolutely. And then just two quick things. The research team is going to be talking to you today. They're on the agenda about our annual use of force report. And so they'll talk to you about when you'll get your draft version of that. And so that'll be a little later in the presentation. And then if you all are interested in the MLK March, that's going to be on Monday, January the 19th. And so at the Jefferson Street Missionary Baptist Church. And then we'll march to the Gentry Center like we normally do. So I wanted to talk to you about those two things. And yeah, that concludes my executive director's report.
Okay. Do we have anything on the MOU?
Yeah, that comes next up on the agenda.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
If I could, Chair, I'd like to, after they finish, I'd like to give my reflections on the MOU meeting today with the police department. I was present, and I wanted to voice some of the things that I saw.
Okay.
And thank you, Mrs. Thursday, for being at our budget meeting. We appreciated that. Okay. Okay.
And just by way of summary and intro, and I look forward to Member Wynn's comments, was very helpful having him present. And this morning at 8:30 a.m., Executive Director Fitchard and Member Mark Wynn and myself met with Cindy Gross of Metro Legal, along with Deputy Chief Green and Commander Starling. And in my opinion, this was a fruitful meeting. This was our annual MOU meeting where we discussed the nuts and bolts of our working agreement that governs MNPD and the CRB's relationship. And a whole lot of work went into preparation of that agreement. And there are our executive committee, our MOU subcommittee did a great job of proposing additional language to make it stronger. Some of those points were agreed upon, some were not, and talks are still in progress. We're going to circulate drafts amongst the two parties and hopefully get something signed that'll govern our relationship moving forward. And
Okay, Board Member Wynn.
So today's meeting was my first as a board member directly with the police department, and my observation was, like Ms. Brazil said, it was fruitful. They seemed genuine and sincere, and wanted to do whatever we could do to make adjustments and refinements to the existing MOU, which this is the way I took it today. We weren't creating something new. We were just trying to get it right. And you both did a great job of representing the board today. So, and you didn't give up any ground, but I appreciate our attorney as he do what attorneys do. They are trained arguers, professional arguers, and he did a very good job of representing the board, and made our point to the police department of what our intentions were, of what we needed to do what we do day in and day out. So I thought that went pretty well. The disagreements with the police department, I've got a few here, and it seemed I don't know whether they would call them disagreements or not, but they were clear in their bright line of how far they would go, and it's based on their definition of the state statute, on what our scope is and what we need and what we don't need. And that's fair enough. I mean, their lawyer was doing a good job as well, Ms. Gross, and she was, protecting her interests of the police department, and I appreciate that. So it wasn't contentious. So everybody was in agreement. I think we got down to some reasonable expectations of both, that what they could provide and why they couldn't. The timelines changes that we asked for. It was nice to have Commander Starling, talk about his burden, and I felt it was honest about what his limitations were inside OPA, because we think sometimes in this board that when we ask for something, that he should be able to reach in any department in any section of the department and pull it out and give it to us. And that's not true. That's what I got today, that he has to stand in line with everybody else. Matter of fact, I made note about body-worn camera requests. He said he has to stand in line with 300 to 400 requests of body-worn camera footage. So there's a long line. He has to stand. That I'm not making excuses. It was nice to hear him talk about honestly his limits and what he could and what he couldn't do. It was good to hear that there was a lieutenant and a captain that were directly responsible for the editing process of the body-worn camera footage. I think that for me, it came out today. So it was brought up about the annual review of the MOU, and the attorney Gross said that she would like to, and you correct me if I'm wrong about this, is to correct it as we go. In other words, if they see some problem in the back and forth between us and the police department, that she'd rather fix it now instead of an annual review. But I wasn't sure whether she said to eliminate annual review, which I think would be a mistake. If they want to meet more with us to make things work easier, that's great. But to do away with the annual review, I think is a mistake, because it needs to be done annually. You have to evaluate our relationships annually. So that came out. And then the training of the recruits, I think we had asked in his portion of the MOU about CRB having access to training of the recruits, and maybe in service as well, but at least the recruits. And we were told that in-person training wouldn't be available to us, that their schedule is so tight at the academy that they would let us do a video, or they didn't say that's my word. They offered us producing a video to explain CRB to show the recruits. And I voiced my, not objection, but disappointment in that we've gotten to the point now where we don't want, and let me watch my language, it's not that we don't want, is that we're not insisting that we have humans in the classroom with the recruits, not a videotape. That's not training to me, and I know a little about training. So, but I understand the limitations, right? Because I asked Commander Starling what he does to train the recruits on OPA, and he says he thinks his training is a video as well. So a video is shown on what OPA is to the recruits. Yeah, so that's an interesting point. Now, the other thing was the data. We were looking for the quantitative data on all complaints from the police department, and I think Assistant Chief Green said that we could get it off the dashboard, that it wasn't available to just send us all the complaints. And I sort of got the feeling that they felt like that information, that data is not in the scope under the state statute about what we could see. And correct me if I'm, again, wrong with any of this. But I, like Director Pitcher, believe that if we're going to keep an eye on the climate inside the police department on things like bias, and we get bias complaints through our complaint process, then that's just one. That's not the only complaint. It'd be nice for us to see, at least to see the quantitative information from the overall complaints from the police department, to see what the trends are, the patterns and practices within the police department. So that was my other observation. So that's just a few of the things, and that's just some of the notes I made there. But I think the meeting went well. I think they most often agree with everything that we asked for. But and there's one other thing I sort of noticed, that a lot of this meeting today was about process. And process is usually, in my mind, worked out, over a phone call or a meeting regularly with somebody. The process, when I listen to Commander Starling talk about his process, you have to be empathetic to him. I mean, because he's juggling a lot of stuff within a major police department, and we have to give him a little time to breathe. But there seems to be, we need to have a regular channel between OPA and CRB on what our reasonable expectations are of them, and vice versa. So which means if we have a problem with a 5-day limit or a 10-day limit on turnaround, whatever it might be, that, we should have a process where we could sit down and talk to them about it, but at the same time learn from each other. No, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing an annual show and tell between both the agencies, where they can come to us and we can go to them and say, here's what we do, here's what you do, so we don't have an unreasonable expectation of you and get mad because you don't send us something on the timeline that we want. So those are my observations. Thank you.
Can I add something here? Commander Starling and I think we have a good workable relationship. I mean, we do dialogue back and forth either by telephone or by email. And so that's not been an issue. And just recently we had talked about, I don't know if I said it to, I think somebody else, and Frank as well, that we were going to invite them to our office or their leadership of OPA to come in and see what our processes look like as well. We've been over there. They've sat down and talked to us about things. I will say the takeaway today, when we were talking about timelines, it was a couple things that he kind of like dug down into that we didn't know for certain as it pertains to timelines. And so I can have some empathy, but, we also have people on the other end of these complaints. And so, I think 10 days is reasonable. I wanted 5, but 10 is fine. 15 is too long. 20 is just way out the box. And so when he mentioned to me that some of his policies, the request that we made for the 10 days is in line with the OPA SOP and policy, I'm in agreement with that, especially as it pertains to getting the body-worn camera footage, which I didn't know that the OPA investigative file that is uploaded to the link is coming from the records division. Had I known that, then I would have been addressing some of my concerns to the records division. So that was just a lack of communication on our part. We didn't know. And so once he explained that, I thought it was a fair amount of time. And then we eliminated, because we had multiple steps that after a year of reviewing them, it didn't make sense. So it was like dual processes, this redundancy, like you contact me in 3 days, then I have to wait 5 days and another 10 days. And we just need to, when the case is closed and the information is ready to be uploaded, let us know. And so we worked on that, and I might go back and revisit that because I was talking to some people in my office about it who do the work to determine whether or not they really want that nod in advance that the cases are closed. Since we now know that it's not coming from OPA, it's coming from the records division. And so when it came to the 300 and 400 cases, what I interpreted he was saying was that they have made a pathway for the CRB to get the cases within the 10-day frame in front of the 300 and 400 people. So I was looking at you. Yeah, you was like 300 or 400 people. What? But yeah, so I think that we made some pathways with that, and I conceded to those things because it makes sense to me. Not giving us the amount of complaints that the police department has in general, how many complaints come into precincts, how many complaints come into OPA. Yeah, I'm going to be in disagreement with that because I think that that's for the public to know. And so I don't think that that's outside the scope of the work that we do as a CRB. So I don't know why they would, he said that he would send us these links. And so I think the public needs to know, if we know how many complaints that we get, we keep a track of that. But I don't think the city, does anybody at this table know how many complaints have come in annually for the Office of Professional Accountability? No. Right. It could be thousands. It could be 500. It could be 200. We don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Board Member Alicia Haddock.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chair. Yes. When you said that, I did. I didn't know I had that expression on my face, but because it didn't make sense for the 300 and 400 for OPA to be in line behind 300 and 400. So thank you for that clarity on that. And then Member Wynn and Attorney Brazil and Director Fitchard, did you say, and did I hear you correctly say, that Commander Starling's training he believes it's on a video at the academy.
Yeah, I think that's my understanding. Look, I want to give him a break here because he's fairly new to his slot as commander of OPA, right? So,
He's been over there for a couple of years.
okay,
Yeah.
well, that's not you. So I think he said that he thought his training was by video. And I offered that whatever time they give him, why don't we just jointly do a training together, OPA and Community Review Board, in the same session. We could split the time up. I don't know if they agree with that or not, but my understanding was, it was by video. Yeah.
And so I would say I think it would be more efficient if the training was in person and it was a live person there. And of course I would advocate for the CRB to be a part of those trainings, but definitely if OPA is training at the training academy, new recruits, I would think that should be in a live person doing that and not a video. So that was probably more insight than anything, because you would assume that the Office of Professional Accountability would have someone at the academy talking about what they do and explaining processes, and it not be on a video. And so we probably need to revisit that, not only as a recommendation, but I like the idea of it being maybe a block of time where the Office of Professional Accountability and the CRB goes in and trains each recruiting class at MNPD.
I think that's important too.
I think so,
because
too.
one of the things is if a recruit, if they're not aware that all of these allegations and these complaints are public records and they go on a portal with, and they will stay there and live there. Yes. And I don't know if they're aware that, complaints are then up, once they go through this process, it's still uploaded publicly.
That's right.
And it may affect, their behavior as well.
Yeah,
so.
and their records. And
their
so
records,
that's a huge part of someone's career.
Yeah.
When we're talking about internal affairs, i.e. Office of Professional Accountability, I think that would, it's almost a disservice to relegate it to a video, and it could affect someone's career and impact it in such a way. And then one more question. Remember what was the last point that you, from your notes, I'm sorry, right down there.
The dashboard?
Yeah, what were you saying on that last point?
So we were asking for quantitative information about overall complaints to the police department, and I think Chief Green said that that's on our dashboard, and we could get it there. That was my understanding.
Yeah. He said he would send us the links.
Right.
Did we get those?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but Frank did look on their dashboards and did not see those, right? Is that correct?
Well, so that's correct. MNPD has a data dashboard that's online, and it's where we get the crime statistics map. And in fact, at one point, I asked Commander Starling if that's what he was referring to, and I believe they said no. This is, and that was Green. It was Chief Deputy Green. He said no, but I'll send you the link. So we await that, but we left it with the way I understood it. They were not disagreeing that this is data that the CRB has a stake in and should know, but it was more so that our proposed language, they feel to believe something that shouldn't be in the agreement because it's outside of the scope mandated by state law. And a very narrow, strict reading of the state law would lend itself to the idea that we are limited to closed OPA investigations, to the review of closed OPA investigations. So anytime we're talking about complaint statistics through precincts as a whole, they would say that's not something we're going to outright give you as part of a monthly rolling report. In fact, they did say that today, but directed us to a dashboard that has the same information. So if that's the case, that would be very useful to compile trends and.
But if I can just interject here, so if they have this very narrow view of what the law states, we just read in the law where it said, for the case that we were just reviewing, that it could go to the CRB's executive director to investigate.
Executive director initiation as well.
Yeah, and so my point is, if it says that, I just read it to you all, there was an A and B about cases that we have disagreements about. So it said, A, you send it back to the chief, and the chief can get with the Office of Professional Accountability, or the board may recommend that the executive director investigate the case. So that means that I would have to have the records to be able to investigate that. I know that that's different than what we're talking about, but it goes back to these things where sometimes it's narrow, then other times it's broad, and it's just this back and forth with the law and their interpretation of the law.
Okay, Board Member Cersei.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to emphasize that pattern and practice is an essential part of any investigation regarding discriminatory behavior on the part of the department or on the part of an individual in the department that is a repeat offender but maintains his or her position regardless of that. And so that this fight is important for us. That information, we really should have access to it. And that's not something we need to trade away for some other perk out of the MOU. And I understand why they're a little guarded about that, because that can, at least in terms of damages to the department and the city, pattern and practice lawsuits tend to yield greater damages. And so that we want to make certain that we really battle that one. Yeah.
Board Member Sean Whistle.
Yeah, I was picking up my paddle and putting it down because Chair Haddock, not Chair Haddock, I'm sorry, former Chair. Member Haddock said a lot of the things about the training that I was thinking. One of the questions that I wrote down was how, if this video is the thing, how long is that? I like the idea of OPA and CRB doing kind of a joint thing, as long as that doesn't. We should still be get the allotted time that we would get if we were doing our own and not splitting time. I just wanted to say I think this is an opportunity. When the COB was created, the police department had to get used to the COB being around, right? And we're still experiencing as a CRB those growing pains. So I think this is an opportunity for MMPD to get those recruits acclimated to who we are from the ground running, on the ground. And so I'm curious to know what. I know we talked about what we wanted to see, like in-person interaction with our staff, but what are we going to do? What is this next step to help get us there? How do we ensure that we get that in-person time?
Board
And if I could, before that's addressed, To Member Cersei's point, the intent of the CRB in seeking this data is, in our mind, directly related to our statutory mandate. It's about improving a relationship between us and the department and protecting Nashville. Now, I absolutely agree that there may be concerns of the additional damages under Monell, which is where we talk about in a civil rights case, the custom, the policy, the practice of a municipality and how that can increase what would be otherwise an isolated instance of misconduct or a deprivation of constitutional rights. That's not what we're talking about, though, as the CRB. And the concerns of liability should not be the reason that this entity is not able to fully do the work that we do. And also, there is no reason to believe from anything that we've ever done that we would yield such data for those complaints. Instead, this is the necessary fodder for our work. And I believe that I hope that they know that, but I think it's worth saying. The reason we thrust for this is not for that means, although that's certainly at the forefront of any lawyer in this area's mind. This is about having the raw material to talk about what's happening in our police department, what could be more in line with what we're supposed to do than understand, as the executive director said today, if someone asks, how many complaints did Metro Nashville Police Department have come in this year? Right now, we cannot answer that. There's promises that there's dashboard data that could answer it, but that is definitely something that the CRB should be able to answer. And I'm not sure there's disagreement there from the department, but I'm really going to look for the promised data. And if it isn't there, that's something that I would suggest the board should continue to keep an eye on.
I'm pretty much sure they have an idea because they look at this data. You know, they used to have something every week called CompStat, but they canceled that. The CompStat basically will tell you how many reports were made, how many arrests were made, and so forth, how many tickets was written and stuff like that. But they know what's going on. If they got a location, let's just say a 3728 district, we got this kind of crime occurring in this area here. What are we to do about it? Do we need to set a task force to work this area, you know, to kind of narrow this theft down, this drug problem down? You know, in the same way, if you had a zip code in Green Hill, you better get on it. You won't have a job if not. But they have an idea, pretty much rocket science. And you saying something about how many calls they get in, about 300 or 400, you know, and if we call in, we're among them. Because if I the chief, I put you right there at 390, 395. So give you a chance to wait and think about it, you know. And you know, they mean well, they do a good job. You know, don't get me wrong. Sometimes one or two bad apples can make it look bad for everybody else, you know. But the best thing is to work teamwork. We work together, and that way you can avoid a whole lot of these lawsuits. You know, where you spend out a whole lot of money. You attack it up front, and then I'll save some money towards the end. Boy, when win.
Yeah, so and can I make a comment on that? And you agree with this? You talked about Monell. So liability with police departments, the plaintiff's attack usually is under discovery to data mine you. And when they data mine, they look at data that you already know you already have. If you don't, that's going to be a problem for you in court. If there's a custom or culture of discrimination or bias or whatever the complaint's about. So I would think that in a modern police department like Nashville, they already know these numbers. So they have a challenge with it. And the second is the answer to Member Witzel's question about training. This is what I do for a living. I think you all know that. And I've trained at our academy for more than 15 years when I was there. And I've helped create the annual calendar for recruited in service. And this has been a while back. So there's the challenges for the academy, and it's not their fault. They have a limited amount of time to train officers in unbelievably complex issues. And even today, it's much worse. So their time has to be really clocked to the minute. There's mandates in the law for some classes they cannot ignore. They have to do it. So there's always a challenge with the calendar at the academy on getting on the calendar to do the training, and I appreciate that. But an option might be for us to make a request, and if the academy director is watching, he's going to be upset about this, but making a direct request to the chief about us talking about what Member Whistle's talking about is for us to have time, in-person time with the recruits. Yeah, right. So they don't. There's no misunderstanding about who we are. I mean, I don't want to. People shouldn't be under the impression that the CRB is anti-law enforcement. That's not what it's about. This is about raising standards for law enforcement. So the best way to do that is to communicate our desire for higher standards. It should be a badge of honor for any police department to have a great relationship with any kind of review board or oversight. So if it's something to consider for the board, and maybe asking the director to maybe ask the chief or draft a letter to the chief asking for an audience or request for at least 30 minutes to an hour for orientation on CRB to the recruits. We're probably going to do it for in-service because that runs all year long, and it's 40 hours a week that you have to go through every year. And it's unbelievable. It's like a machine. I mean, they don't stop from the moment January 1 to December the 25th. I mean, it's just ongoing all the time. But the chief he's the chief, but he's also the academy director.
Okay, let's move along the agenda. Let's go with 61-page complaint update.
Nothing to report.
Okay. The next item on is the NCRB consent closures.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about that. All right. So I wanted to just a little quick explanation about the two cases. So these closures, there was one case on here that had, I want to explain it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But this case that I want to talk about on the closure, I'm using this as a lead-in to the case that is a case. So basically, in 2025-011, there was the reason why this case is closed is because the police department, OPA, could not find an officer attached to Metro Police Department with this allegation. They did a complete investigation. I felt like the investigation was very thorough, and it addressed, all of the issues. I mean, the young woman who was driving, I'm going to read it just so that everyone knows what I'm talking about. But the reason why I closed it, and I'll tell you, is because there's not an officer here attached. But they did spend the resources to do a thorough investigation, and I wanted to put that on record. But it didn't make sense to have it listed as a CRR and go on a website when there's no officer attached to it, which is different than the case that we'll be presenting to you. There is an officer named in that position. Okay, so anyway, it says on March 8th, 2025, the complainant reported that while driving on Briley Parkway near Ashland City and heading towards White Ridge Road, she encountered a reckless driver whom she believed to be a Metro Nashville police officer. And during the incident, the individual allegedly held a pair of handcuffs from his truck window, which caused her to believe he was affiliated with law enforcement. The complainant stated the driver aggressively brake checked her, and when she attempted to pass, he veered towards her vehicle, forcing her off the road while he continued to display the handcuffs. So he was holding them out the window at her. She further reported that the driver pursued her at speeds reaching up to 100 miles per hour, and that the complainant stated that during this incident she feared for her safety and felt threatened by the driver's aggression and wants a formal investigation into the matter because she believed the driver to be an MMPD officer. She also took a picture of the person, I guess as he was driving by. She got a side view, not the tag number. And so when this case went over to OPA, they thought he looked familiar to them. And so they began to search and do some database checks for that type of vehicle. And, and did a bunch of things, a host of things that you can review in the findings. But because they weren't able to determine that this was an MMPD officer, I elected, instead of doing a complete, which I started doing, the report, I decided to just go ahead and close the account as what they did, which is a matter of record. Because there is not an officer attached to this that they could confine. But I thought that the investigation that they completed was thorough. And so that leads me to what Dr. Kim is going to read shortly, but this is a closure, and then when we get to that one, you can determine if you want that one to be a closure as well, okay, because it's similar, okay? All right, so we're still on the administrative closures. If you want to wait and do that after this case, all right, so we're going to just move over and let Dr. Kim go, and then we will take a motion on both.
I'll be presenting CC 2024-015 and the allegations of misconduct by NCRB are adherence to policy and rules, honesty and truthfulness, and false or inaccurate reports. And the summary of complaint allegations are such. On February 3rd of 2024, Ms. Jessica Taylor, hereinafter referred to as the complainant, submitted a web-based complaint to the Nashville Community Review Board alleging misconduct by officers during a traffic stop. Complainant reported that on January 31st of 2024, while leaving the Falls subdivision where she resided, officers followed Mr. Telly Inslee, hereinafter referred to as T.E., and ultimately conducted a traffic stop on North 1st Street in East Nashville. During the stop, T.E. stated that the officers did not activate their emergency equipment until the point of contact at which they pulled him over. T.E. asserted that when he asked the officers why he was being stopped, they told him there was a warrant or an indictment for his arrest, despite his having just met with his probation officer. He stated that he was then detained and subjected to a search during which officers allegedly pulled down his pants, lifted his testicles, and searched his rectal area 3 times at the scene. T.E. further reported overhearing a female officer tell other officers they needed to hurry because they were not supposed to be there without a warrant, and that the officers acted suspiciously and repeatedly used the names Sam and Samantha. According to T.E., the officers ultimately did not arrest him, but told him that he would have to work for them or they would make his life hell and bring additional charges against him. He stated that the officers did not identify themselves, did not provide any paperwork or evidence supporting their claims, or hoodies without body-worn cameras, and that he received only a citation. T.E. also reported being told that if he did not work for them, they would enter the indictment into the computer by Monday morning. And therefore, the OPA investigation, and this was taken directly from their report. OPA received a complaint from the NCRB. The complainant alleged officers followed T.E. and stopped him in East Nashville. She continued with the officers telling him that he had a warrant or an indictment for his arrest, and the complainant said that the officers searched him again 3 times, including pulling his pants down and searching his testicles. A dog was brought to the scene to look for drugs, and 1 blunt was found. Others said they had a warrant to search his house. Officers said they had a warrant to search his house. The complainant also alleged that officer issued TE a citation but did not give him a booking date or name and gave him a fake badge number. Another allegation was that the officers refused to identify themselves. On March 8th of 2024, a preliminary investigation was conducted to determine if the officers involved in this incident were actually Metro Nashville police officers. It had been determined that the officers involved may be with a different agency. No MMPD officer was involved in the traffic stop or the search warrant. This matter was in response to a caller being concerned about 5 cars pulling up to her neighbor's house. The caller informed dispatch that 3 subjects went inside the house with guns on their holsters and on their hips. She stated that the case be closed as a matter of record. With the NCRB review, the NCRB's review of the OPA investigation confirmed that only a preliminary inquiry was conducted. A review of the ECC computer-aided dispatch CAD report indicated that on January 31st of 2004, Officer Burton Beeson was dispatched to 975 Fletcher Lane in Falls subdivision in response to the caller's concern about the 5 vehicles that arrived in the neighboring residence. According to the caller, 3 individuals exited the vehicles and entered the residence with firearms hosted on their hips. The ECC CAD report identified only Beeson as the responding officer, and the MMPD CAD report history activity likewise confirmed his dispatch to the incident and location. However, the CAD documentation did not reflect any arrival time for Officer Beeson, and neither did the ECC CAD report nor the MMPD CAD activity report indicate that additional officers were dispatched to 975 Fletcher Lane. The AD also reviewed the misdemeanor citation that was issued to TE, and it confirmed that on January 30th of 2004, he was issued a citation and charged with a drug offense as narcotics were found to be in his possession. And the conclusions of the OPA, and the investigator in this case was Sergeant Ted Woosley, and he concluded that there will be no summary of recommendations. A preliminary investigation was conducted to determine if the officers involved were Metro Nashville Police Department officers. It has been determined that the officers involved may be from a different agency. No Metro Nashville Police Department officers were involved, and for this reason, the matter will be closed as a matter of record. So the NCRB concluded that, they investigated the case, they did the preliminary investigation, and that was satisfactory. However, we felt like they could have done more to find out who these alleged officers were, and also to provide a documented report of the findings of the preliminary investigation. And the assistant director did confer with the ED on this matter, and we recommend that the board accept the report and send it to the mayor and our chief of police. And the other allegations that NCRB alleged were, of course, unfounded.
I did want to add to one thing. We were concerned about the ECC report, that it didn't have. It's not usual to receive a ECC report, the CAD report, which is the computer-aided dispatch. It doesn't have timestamps, and so I was going to send that to Mr. Martini, the director, because as I told you in the last month, we are seeing, multiple things or issues, or we need some more understanding of the ECC process. And, I don't think I've ever received a CAD report that did not have timestamps attached to it. And so either we got a CAD report that was incorrect, or we got a CAD report that was I don't know. I don't have any understanding on why we received a CAT report for an officer that was dispatched to a location and it doesn't have his arrival time and his, return back into service time. So, yeah.
Okay, board members. Do we get a motion? I think we want to try to take handle these two reports at the same time. Is that correct?
So, I'd like to determine how do you want us to handle this? If it needs to have more investigation, if it needs to be closed. However, because at this point, no officer has been identified, and so it is similar to what I just read to you all. There's not an officer attached. The reason why we did it in this format as a case was because there is an officer that did go to the location, allegedly, because the CAT report doesn't show it, but they said that he was dispatched there. So that's why I didn't just automatically close it.
Board member Wynn?
So the citation, that's the link between who have cited, who's cited and who's a citing officer.
This is a citation for misdemeanor, it looks like for misdemeanor marijuana, and the officer here, we have,
Has an employee number.
is that employee number Beezus?
Let's see.
Look and see if it's employee, look on his, you can look and see, do you have the disciplinary?
Yeah, there was no disciplinary.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's an employee number, and it might be,
What time, was it the same date?
this was issued on January 30th of 2024 at 11:40.
What time was the case?
Check
When,
it out.
what was the date that where's your, let me see your report. Okay, hold on. Yeah, it's the same day. The complainant reported on January 31st. So it's gotta be the officer in here, but we can double check that.
We
Well,
can confirm that.
that would be to me, it would be the first place I'd look, because
Right.
if you got a copy of the state citation, do you have a copy of the state?
Yeah.
And the officer's name, there's no officer's name on it.
No, they now, on this state citation, they use their employee number.
But not a name.
No. But
So-
it's at the same time, the same date that the complainant made the complaint.
Okay, so it's
I'm
a
assuming-
non-custodial misdemeanor state
That's correct.
citation, which means the man has to show up for fingerprinting booking.
Correct.
Correct.
Right. So have we checked with the state clerk to see who the arresting officer is?
But no, we know that, we assume that this officer is Officer Beezus, the one that was dispatched there.
Okay,
He's the one that searched him and found the marijuana. That's not in
sorry.
question.
This
What's
is a
in
little
question
complex.
is this anonymous call-in that says that 5 officers. Now remember, this complainant is also on probation and should not be having any type of marijuana. Okay, and so this officer, someone calls in. We assume that the person that is with the complainant. No, not with the complainant. Well, they're together. The complainant, the person that called in, is also with the person that got the citation. The person that got the citation is not the complainant. It's somebody that's with them. And they say 5 officers of the 5.
Five
Five
officers.
officers pulled me over and did this and, searched me and all that. And if that is, we can't verify that is what I'm saying, because none of those officers have a dispatch to that location.
So what is your suspicion that some other agency is asking our officers to cite people?
No, it's not about the citation. He's saying that they're asking him to be a CI.
I got that part, but
Okay.
so we got these unknown supposed
There's
officers.
unknown officers that allegedly
Is it ICE?
came to his
Could be.
home.
I don't
And
know.
the woman who lived in the
Or it could be
neighborhood is the
nobody.
one who made the complaint.
Got it, okay.
The individual, the witness, TE, did not actually make the complaint. The woman made the complaint saying that she saw 5 officers, saw them exit their vehicles, have gun on their hips, though that type of thing. And then Officer Beeson comes out after these 5 officers come out. But we don't have any record of who these 5 officers were.
It sounds like, and it happens a lot, believe it or not, a group of officers that works together and they notice that one of their co-workers is making a stop, they'll ease that way to make sure everything is okay. But they ain't gonna identify it if they on this stop or not, because there's no telling what may go down. If they need to make this known, they will. But it happens a lot, but you can hear he can be 4 or 5 blocks away, and they say, well, let me ease that way and see what's going on, see if he needs some assistance. And that's basically, that sounds pretty much what happened. Board member, head off.
Yes, and so I think, so going back to really the original question, what do we do with this? Because we don't know who these officers are, neither does MNPD.
Correct.
Okay.
And this happened in Joelton, so it could be officers from another county that because that's right up near the county line. I mean, it's just hard to determine that.
But it was still in Davidson County.
It happened in Davidson County, but I'm just saying that is up there.
Right, where it could have touched.
Yeah.
But shouldn't, when other officers come, as in another jurisdiction, don't they notify that the local law enforcement that they're conducting whatever kind of activity?
Yeah,
right? So
usually.
you don't just roll up in somebody's,
yes.
right. Okay. And so it sounds like that would be one where we go back, we send it back, because number one, we should know who's doing what in whatever neighborhood in Davidson, Metro, Nashville, Davidson County. And it would be on MNPD's onus to make sure that they know who is, just saying that we don't know who it was is insufficient. It could have been a state agency. It could have been someone from another county. It could be rogue militias that are.
It could. But remember, this did happen in the January of 2024. We're now going into 2026.
Okay. But even if it was somewhere else, they should, let's just say it's another law enforcement agency. We wouldn't want to attempt to find out who was at this location with surrounding agencies I'm just saying, how do we get to at least find out who these people are, since it was not MNPD?
Authority to, investigate it in that capacity.
But MNPD does.
I think so, but I think that they're going to say we did this, there's nothing, we can't prove it, and this case, we did what we could do, and it's 2 years old. So,
yeah.
I don't even know if these people still live in this location, but we can check if that's what you want us to do. But
so
my request would be to close it.
On the consent agenda. How old was that case when they didn't know who the officer was?
The one that I just read? That was
March 8th, 2025.
the one that I just did? Yeah, I think that was 2025.
Yeah. So now we have 2 cases that we don't know who the officers was, and MNPD doesn't either.
Well, we did have a picture of that guy, of the one that I have it here. At least they did a significant amount of work trying to locate and did an investigation on this one. Just a picture of a white male in a Silverado is like, that's the only picture that the young woman was able to provide. And so I think that they did enough, and they tried to do there was no track star that they could trace because they didn't have a tag number.
Right.
And this is a person's POV. It's not like their personal vehicle. And so, yeah, I think this is different than this one, in the sense that she thought he was an MMPD officer because he was holding handcuffs out, which means he could have been a security guard. He could have been anything, And so I think that this was a good. Right. Good. So, okay. Yeah. So the difference with this case here is you have someone, you don't have the complainant is not making the complaint. This is a person who said that these people went into their home, but then there's nothing else about them going into the home. I don't know if any of this can be verified. Correct. Right. I think that also you have to look at the totality of the circumstances. The fact that somebody is just finished visiting their parole and they got caught with a blunt in their pocket, those types of things can, I think exasperate these situations. But I don't know. I just don't think, that we are going to get much more out of this, in my opinion, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, I do know. Well, I think there's also the point where we have an abnormal CAD report that from ECC without timestamps.
Well, I'm looking at this.
Right?
Where's the
Do they have timestamps on it?
What you said, because this one looks like it has timestamps.
Okay.
Well, that's. See this CAD report. See this timestamp here. Look. It was dispatched and he completed.
Okay, 1:57:02 p.m. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
The MMPD CAD report reflects 1:57:02 p.m. I think it's the other report.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if this one has it, then this is enough evidence for me.
Correct.
That.
Normally, when it was a metro vehicle, it should have a device on that to determine how fast you're going, your location. So if the other car was a metro vehicle, they should have had some kind of AVL device on it to determine.
Well, I think the more concerning part would be there isn't any body-worn camera, because the CAD report looks fine to me.
The officer that wrote the citation should know whether those guys was a metro police personnel.
Let me just read this. So, date and time call received was 1/31/2024 at 1:02 p.m. The officer arrived at 1:57 p.m. and he completed his call within just seconds, it says, which doesn't make sense, in my opinion. If he was dispatched at 1/31/2024 and at 1:57, I don't know why the dispatch would take almost an hour to be dispatched, number one. And then number two, what seems concerning here is he completed his call within 10 seconds, but he issued a citation.
The timing is really not a real factor, depending on the nature on. A lot of times you have a backlog and they take the most urgent calls first.
For the dispatch, but
Right.
I'm talking about his arriving. It doesn't show when he arrived.
And
That's what you were saying.
That's
Yeah.
what I was
So there's no arrival time, and then the completion time. That's what the other one. And then he says that he completed this call within 10 seconds. So that does seem.
His arrival time will be based on
But
when
there's no
he
arrival
checked
time.
on the scene
What time? Let me look at that.
the recording from
I'm
the
not gonna do
dispatcher.
this in real time, but I'm doing. Let me look at the.
The recording from the dispatch should determine what time he arrived because,
We can just send it back and let us do it.
yeah, because he's supposed to check 1097 on the scene.
Yeah, the citation. Let's see what the time is on the citation.
Boardman, what's your comment?
Yeah, I was just thinking, just hearing that there's some discrepancies with the time, I would be in favor of sending it back. But I had a question about What county borders us that where Jolton is? What county is that? Cheatham. Okay. Just curious about that. And even if we were to close it, I think we need to send a message to MMPD that there's an expectation to check those surrounding counties whenever something like this arises.
Okay.
Is there a motion? What should we recommend that they should do?
Okay, send it back and we'll take an extra look if you want. If you want me to do that.
So the motion is to send that one back or send both back?
No, just just this one where there's discrepancies. I don't think the one that I read has any discrepancies.
Okay, which one is that send back? That old?
2024-015, it wasn't under the closures. It
Okay,
was
okay, can we get a motion to send 025 back for further investigation?
2024-015.
I make a motion that we send it back for further investigation.
Is there a second? Second. All opposed? All approve it? Okay. Anybody opposed? I'm sorry. Okay, the motion passes. Now, the other report is,
The others are on the consent agenda.
Move the adoption of the consent agenda.
a motion to adopt the other report. Which one was it? 040?
The consent is 2025-039,
039?
2024-066, and 2025-011, or 011.
I think,
Those are the three.
Okay, we were talking about one was 011 and 015 was the two we were talking about was pretty much close.
No. 2024-015 is a case review.
Okay.
It's
okay.
by itself.
Right.
And that's the one that you guys just motioned to send back for further investigation.
Okay, we got you.
Now you got to go back up to the consent closures.
Okay.
And you don't, so they're just gonna, you just do that at one time. Do you accept the consent closures?
Okay, which,
You want to vote on those?
go ahead.
Yeah, but there's been no second.
Second.
Okay.
That's on yours.
All in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, the motion passed.
All right, thank you. All right, so now you have to do the consent closures.
Okay, the next one, we will have the NCRB consent closures. Okay.
You want to take a motion on those, the consent agenda?
All three?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's what,
Oh, that was your motion?
that was in motion. Okay, I'm sorry.
So you already seconded?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so all in favor, were voted in favor, so those has been approved to close.
Okay.
All right, we have, what is that? The NCRB research presentation of the use of force report.
All right, perfect. Good evening, everyone. My name is Travis Stratton. I'm a research analyst here with the Nashville Community Review Board, joined by my colleague, Ansley Potter. She's a senior research analyst. And basically what we want to talk about today is give an overview of the annual use of force report. We want to explain MMPD's use of force definitions and their reporting practices. We want to communicate key findings from our 2024 annual use of force report, and then just inform you about our methodology, the timeline, and the next steps that we plan to take with this new, with our 2025 use of force report. But I first want to ground us in this timeline. So this timeline here shows a snapshot that our annual use of force report is not a standalone effort. There has been a longer body of work since 2009, so that the NCRB, excuse me, and its predecessor, the Metro Nashville Community Oversight Board, has developed. And so this work on the use of force started in 2019. It started with our proposal to review MNPD's use of force policy. And then in 2020, it expanded to policy advisory reports on the 8 Can't Wait framework, in addition to the use of force decrees. And then in 2021, we did an evaluation of MNPD's revision to their use of force policy, and then we recommended that MNPD require reporting of their soft, empty hand control, in which they put into policy or into practice in the future from that recommendation. And then in 2023, we published our first annual use of force report, and then 2024, and then now we are continuing that continuity of the publishing of an annual use of force report. And so when we think about accountability and use of force, Metro Nashville Police Department, we think about the context of Nashville, we have to consider the officer-involved shootings of both Jaquez Clemens and Daniel Hambrick. Both of those officer-involved shootings brought national attention and local attention to what we saw were indications from the community about how MNPD caused harm using excessive force. And so what we find in research is that use of force is rare, especially when you compare it to police interactions. But when use of force is committed, the impact on communities, we see the disparities, there's a large impact. And so the racial and demographic disparities, we see that they continue to appear in force outcomes. And so we feel very strongly that without clear and reliable data, it becomes difficult for the public to understand exactly what's happening. And so that's why we want to continue the publishing of our annual use of force report. And so basically the purpose of our annual use of force report is to provide clear and accessible data on how, when, and where use of force is used by MNPD. We want to identify trends. We want to identify disparities and areas for improvement. And so we also, with that, where we can, where needed, we want to provide evidence-based recommendations for policy change, as we've done in the past. And ultimately, we want to strengthen the accountability and build trust between our community, MNPD, and policymakers. And so MNPD has a current standing use of force policy. It's found within the department manual under Title 11. And basically, this establishes legal, constitutional, and departmental expectations for when and how force may be used, or how officers can use this force. And so ultimately, the use of force policy, the purpose is to protect protect life and property while upholding constitutional rights. And so within that policy, officers must use only the force necessary, reasonable to accomplish lawful objectives. And so force must be proportional to the level of resistance or the threat. And so that's the policy, but in practice, MNPD uses a use of force continuum. And so the use of force continuum, it starts first with official presence, officer presence, and then works its way up through verbal direction. And then here's where the reporting takes place. It's at the soft, empty hand control, and then escalates to chemical spray or use of taser, then hard, empty hand control, impact weapons, and then ultimately deadly force. And so one thing I want to note about this continuum is that it's not a checklist or a ladder that officers are expected to climb. This continuum moves, or officers, their use of force moves along this continuum as, the subject's resistance and the situation changes or escalates. And so to report use of force, MAPD uses 4 different forms. The Form 108 is the standard use of force form that they use. And then Form 108F is the form that they use to report firearm discharges. And then Form 108T is a form that they use in order to when they use tasers. So when they deploy the tasers, and then Form 108 is for non-compliant behavior, more force that's not beyond the soft empty hand control. And so I want to spend some time on this slide, to go over some of our key findings from our 2024 annual use of force report. And so what we found when we did our data analysis and basically watching the trends and patterns of the use of force, we found that overall use of force trends increased, and in part they increased because of the reporting structure, not because of change in police behavior or officers' behavior, but there was an overall change in use of force trends. We saw soft empty hand control is the most common use of force. And so soft empty hand control became the most frequently reported form of force after full reporting began in 2022. We also found that racial disparities persist across multiple benchmarks. And so we found that Black residents, they experience police use of force at rates far exceeding their share of the Nashville population. With that, we also saw that Black residents represented 60% of all use of force subjects, despite making up approximately 27% of the population here in Nashville. We also saw disparities that are especially pronounced for certain types of force. So we saw that firearm displays are used against Black residents at 3 times the rates observed for white residents. We also saw that soft empty hand control is used against Black residents at nearly twice the rate observed for white residents. And soft empty hand controls, some example of those are like holding a person's arm or wrist, a slow or controlled takedown, or maybe an elbow or shoulder manipulation. And then when we think about use of force in youth, we also saw severe disparities there. We found that Black youth are subjected to police use of force nearly 10 times more often than white youth. We found that nearly 96% of the youth subjected to force by school resource officers were Black. Despite that, Black students make up less than half of MMPS's enrollment. And then lastly, when it comes down to youth and use of force with MMPD, we found that Black girls were disproportionately represented among youth subjected to force and school-related encounters. And then officer characteristics, right, and assignments matter. That the data showed that as well. We found that officers who use force most frequently are overwhelmingly white. They're male, and they're assigned to patrol and investigative units. And then lastly, use of force incidents are mostly concentrated, we found, in North Nashville, South Nashville, and Antioch. And so with all of these findings, we presented recommendations to Metro Nashville Police Department. And so within those 12 recommendations, we were able to categorize these recommendations into themes. And you received a handout from my colleague, but these themes are highlighted here. They cover data and transparency, oversight, access. They cover policy and reporting reform. It covers early intervention and peer accountability. training culture and procedural justice, recruitment and representation, and then youth and school context. And so I will now pass this on to my colleague, Ansley Potter.
Thank you, Travis, for bringing everyone up to speed on our department's previous use of force work and for emphasizing the importance of us returning to this topic annually. Now, I'd just like to briefly talk about what progress has looked like since publication of the last use of force report in February of 2024, and then I'll go over our analysis plans briefly for the 2025 annual report. So while the full report that we will, draft and share with you all in the coming months, will cover progress in terms of checking in on which of the 12 recommendations MMPD has adopted and the extent to which they've been implemented. For the sake of time today, I'm just going to highlight 2 pieces of progress in this presentation. First, this relating to the screenshot you'll see in the middle of this slide. In May of 2024, Metro Council passed legislation requiring MMPD to send response to resistance reports to the council quarterly, including, among other things, an overview of the ages of subjects of force who are under 18, reporting additional force used during an incident when a firearm discharge occurs, and any use of force events listed as out of compliance by MMPD. So this is great progress in terms of transparency and accountability, and extending that transparency and accountability to Metro Council is great. Additionally, MMPD has updated their data reporting methods in alignment with a couple out of the 12 recommendations from the 2024 report. They've updated their data reporting methods on the public dashboard for pertaining to use of force to include firearm displays, taser displays, and an additional encoding to record which incidents of soft empty hand control resulted in subject injury versus non-injury. And yeah, both of these are also great markers of progress and are adoptions from the 2024 report recommendations. So now, moving on to the plans for the upcoming report. So this year, the report will be a bit different in that we're proposing a 2-part publication rollout to keep our use of force reports accessible while also allowing for more robust data analysis. So the first part, which we're kind of calling the annual use of force review, will be very much a community-oriented review of use of force incidents covering 2023, 2024, and 2025. Although the 2024 report was published in February 2024, because of the state preemption and a lack of, we were sort of cut off to certain data access, the data included in that report ends in 2022. So we'll need to pick up with covering, none of 2023 was covered in that past report, and so we'll pick up from there. It will outline major findings, policy comparisons, and recommendations in very much straightforward language, incorporating feedback from y'all, the board, and the public throughout the process via a public forum, as usual. And the second part of this publication will be what we're calling the Use of Force Technical Report. It will serve as a more in-depth research companion report. It will include all of our statistical analyses, data visualizations, kind of output tables from data analysis, and will outline the methodologies that we use. So the goal here is that by splitting up the report, we can ensure that each audience, so community members, policymakers, fellow researchers in other departments, get the level of detail and format that best serves their needs while maintaining consistency and alignment between the 2 reports, as well as alignment with our past use of force report structure. So I'll just cover a brief breakdown of our general analysis plan without getting too into the weeds for the sake of time. And covering things like the research questions that we'll be asking, some example data visualizations given from our initial exploratory analyses. So to start, we will, of course, include kind of baseline descriptive analyses to paint the big picture of what our data looks like before diving into any testing any relationships between factors. So these summaries, usually bar graphs or pie charts, counts generally essentially allow us to glimpse what's happening, how often, and who's involved in use of force incidents. So we'll ask questions, or be able to answer questions like how many use of force incidents occurred each year, which precincts see the most incidents, what kinds of resistance are most common from subjects, what types of force are used most often by officers, things like that. So these, and visuals like the associated bar graphs will help us understand the landscape of force incidents to see, get a glimpse of the data before we dive into the why and how that they occurred. So yes, we'll look at some things like subject demographics, like subject age, officer demographics, like officer years of service, the spread and what's the word I'm looking for? The occurrence of different distribution of different types of force used, as well as the distribution of the reported reasons for force used, and many more. And so next we'll also include our bivariate analyses. So with these we'll be examining relationships between two variables at a time. So for instance, how the reason force was used relates to the type of force used, or whether officer experience is like related to the level of force used. So this heat map you see here highlights where relationships between factors are stronger or weaker than would be expected if the two factors were completely independent of each other. So for instance, blue cells might indicate that combinations that occur less often than expected if the two variables were independent of each other, while orange or red cells show areas where certain types of force happen more often than would be expected. So these kind of visuals help us visually pinpoint patterns that are worth diving into and exploring with further analyses. So at this stage, we're not quite able to say that one factor causes another, only that they seem to change together in meaningful ways.
Please allow me to interrupt you just for a moment.
Absolutely, yeah.
And ask you both to send
the slides,
these slides
absolutely, yes.
to all of us.
Yes, will do.
Thank you.
And so finally, once we establish what variables might be related, we'll use further multivariate statistical models like mixed effects regression to test these relationships while controlling for other factors. So basically, this enables to get at answers to questions like, after controlling for officer demographics and precinct, does subject resistance still predict higher force outcomes? Or when adjusting for reason for force used, do officers with fewer years of service tend to use higher levels of force? And so on the right here, we have a stacked bar chart, which just charts predicted probabilities of different force levels used by officers according to different reasons for force reported. And so we can compare predicted probabilities when we control for different factors in our models, like whether we include officer demographics or precincts, year, things like that. All right. And so, some of the plan will start with descriptives and move into bivariate analyses to show us how any two things are relating to one another. And building off of that, we'll use multivariate analyses to help determine which factors independently drive certain outcomes. And together, these will paint the full picture of our data that helps us understand not just what we see in the data, but why certain patterns are emerging, so that future policy recommendations are, bolstered by a variety of evidence. All right, and so finally, to cover our expected timeline for this two-part report, we anticipate they'll be able to complete an internal review of our first draft and be ready to present perhaps, hopefully, at the February board meeting with a public forum occurring soon after to share the draft with community members and solicit feedback. And finally, we're aiming for publication of the final reports by the start of the second quarter of 2026, so around April. And with that, and the slides that I'll send you guys to have more examples and kind of like analysis figures that we decided to not include for the sake of time, but those will be in there as well to kind of flesh out things further. But yeah, other than that, we're happy to answer any questions you may have, and thank you for your time.
Since we don't have any questions, We're going to move on to number 12, the public comment. Okay.
No, I'll be short. Is there an equivalent of the analysis going on inside the police department that you all are doing?
That is a good question. I will have to reach out to our liaison. Oh.
So have you seen it?
We, in terms of what's publicly available, I'm not sure if it dives as much into kind of the multivariate analyses. It's kind of like descriptive general overview, like in alignment with what our previous reports have looked like. But I'll need to kind of take a look back to give you a better answer about that.
So the national standards for force review and analysis are set by NACO?
NACO just released theirs, and then, yeah.
You said just like this year for the first time, or?
Yeah, they just, well, I don't know if it's for the first time, but they have a new one that they just released that we were, when we were at the NACO conference, they presented on it. And they did that with multi-agencies, from across the nation. Right. So like Seattle was involved, Los Angeles.
So we don't have a comparison to other agencies then, do we?
I don't know. Not necessarily. I think we just have that whole new policy that I think they are all adopting.
And then one more, it's this report of the use of force by school resource. This came up the last report, as I remember. There was no answer from the department about why the numbers were as high as they were. In your research, have you talked to other bodies like ours in other cities and where they saw the same trend and disparities of use of force in public schools by resource officers?
Yeah, no, so we haven't compared our data with MPD and the disparities in terms of youth and black girls specifically to other departments, but I think that's something worth looking into to explore, at what rate are we either meeting other departments or are we shamefully headlining this?
So if we're not getting an answer of why it is these numbers are the way they are, your opinion as an analyst is what? And you don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
Repeat the question.
So if the numbers show a disparity in white-black subjects in use of force in public schools, why is that? What's the causation? Again, you don't have to answer that if you don't know.
So
yeah.
if I could jump in, I think part of the issue with analyzing things like the data pertaining to SRO and juveniles is that there's a lot less transparency around that. So as a result, there's a lot less discussion at things like NACOL. And so that's one question that we definitely seek to answer. And it may just be that we need additional protocols for reporting as a separate policy in and of itself pertaining to SRO force used with juveniles. But we're going to do things like dive deeper into those like quarterly reports, which detail summaries of when subjects under the age of 18 are involved in force incidents to kind of get more clarity on that. But I think it's partly a transparency issue since juveniles are involved.
So you would agree that if we had the kind of data we need to view, then we could make policy recommendations to the police department. This is to me, this is one of the biggest parts of your report. Mm-hmm. I mean, why is that true? And are they self-examining at the police department why that's true? Or do they agree with your numbers? Do they agree with your numbers?
They haven't seen the numbers
They haven't seen it? Okay. But they have a report. They have a prior report.
They have the prior report. We haven't, I don't think that we got a response.
There's been no response
back.
from a prior report? Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, we're gonna go on, but I'm gonna give you the real answer to that. The real answer is, you got people who want these daytime jobs and weekend off, and the data that they provide in their department to keep their little job intact. You know, they still latched on to this data stuff, you know, like they used to have a ComStat. They were showing how many arrests they made, how many citations they made. The school system is a little bit different from the outside world. And some things that they do, the schools themselves can handle. You know, they got indoor suspension, at-home suspension, that type of thing. But the key thing is getting to the SRO, getting locked into the system, in the school system, so you can have straight days and weekend. That's the bottom line of it. And I'm so sick and tired of them trying to tell me how many arrests they made, making children a criminal before they even graduate from high school. And let's move on. Let's go with public comment.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate. Good job. We do have. Do we have any public comment?
I'm present for any public comment.
Okay. Did you get his signature? Did you sign? Okay. Come on. You signed it. Okay.
Cool.
All right.
Can I go there?
You go up there. Introduce yourself.
Sure. Before I go, what is the time limit on public comment?
It is 3 minutes.
Can I request additional time if I am indeed the only person giving public comment?
It depends on how much additional minutes. This is the longest meeting I ever held.
I apologize. Can I request 2 additional minutes?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair. So my name is Stephen Watts, and I'm here to talk about Resolution 1659, otherwise known as the Mayor's MOU. In an article I wrote in the Contributor in February during the FUSIS fight, I said that public safety is first and foremost an issue of democracy, of whether the people and processes that have been installed have the power to dictate whether police will function according to their own terms, or just like every other government department, be governed by their community, by the community's priorities. Before you today, you have a sheet that outlines certain untruths that the mayor's office has spread about the Memorandum of Understanding between Metro and Nashville Downtown Partnership. The first and foremost is that this document that funnels surveillance through a private nonprofit is actually ineligible for the grant according to the RFP, is a form of oversight, which is what they have been telling City Council. But again, this is not today's public comment. I don't want to primarily talk about ethicality. I want to talk about the ways in which the mayor's office is coercing City Council to violate Metro law, to sidestep the authority of the Community Review Board. Chapter 1308, Section 80 of the Metro Code reads, approval by the Metropolitan Council by a resolution adopted after a public hearing, emphasis on adopted after a public hearing, shall be required prior to any of the following actions by the Metropolitan Government of Nashville or Davidson County, the departments, boards, or commissions thereof, or any individual or entity acting on its behalf. These actions include clause number 2 reads, entering into an agreement with a private entity to acquire, share, or otherwise use surveillance technology or the information it provides. 3, clause 3 reads, accepting state or federal funds or in-kind or other donations for surveillance technology. Clause number 4 reads, acquiring new surveillance technology, including but not limited to procuring such technology without the exchange of monies or consideration. During last week's public health and safety meeting, the mayor's office has tried to avoid this public hearing, which is also a reason that these monies are being funneled to Nashville Downtown Partnership instead of District Management Corporation, which is the grantee on the grant that has been given by the state. None of these reasons, however, that they provided align with Metro Code. Number 1, they have stated that this is not a new technology placed in the right right of way. However, MMPD officials, I believe it was Chief Gilder, repeatedly confirmed increased capability would be added to technologies such as cameras on blue light poles that are stated that are placed in the public right of way. Additionally, new cameras and angles would be added to access angles currently not available. New software on old hardware is still surveillance. New hardware on old locations is still surveillance. Secondly, the other reason they've given to avoid the public hearing is that this technology will have a public hearing once acquired by Metro. However, Metro Code makes it absolutely clear that a public hearing is required upon entering an agreement to acquire surveillance. And so a public hearing is both required now and secondly, when the surveillance is actually procured. The third reason provided is that this technology is not surveillance. This is a real argument offered by Councilman Huffman, who also is the chair of the Public Health and Safety Committee. However, a rather robust definition of surveillance is offered in the Metro Code, again, Chapter 1308, Section 080. 5Cast, which Deputy Chief Gilder described as software that monitors online speech and supports investigations before crimes occur, and LeoSite, which was founded by the former CRO of FUSIS and was on the signed that contract with the city, is described as a real-time integration tool, which neatly falls within Metro Code's definition of surveillance technology, which, according to Metro Code, shall mean any electronic surveillance device, hardware, or software that is capable of collecting, capturing, recording, retaining, processing, intercepting, analyzing, monitoring, or sharing audio, visual, digital, location, thermal, biometric, or similar information or communications specifically associated with or that can be or capable of being associated with any specific individual or group or any system, device, or vehicle. That is a direct quote, is a very broad definition that was written by then Councilman Dave Rosenberg. I am asking for three things today of the Community Review Board. The first is to publicly state to Council that procedurally, this process where the Mayor's Office, MMPD, and NDP have created an MOU for procurement of surveillance sidesteps the authority of the Community Review Board. By using this procurement structure that intentionally avoids oversight that Metro created to review policing practices, MMPD is in conflict with the MOU draft that I've seen between MMPD and the CRB to ensure cooperative interaction such that police services are delivered in Metro Nashville in a manner that promotes public confidence in the CRB. Specifically, routing this money through the mayor's MOU to Nashville Downtown Partnership, an entity that is ineligible for it, instead of giving it to the DMC, the grantee on the application, which is an entity whose budget Metro already has control of, is specifically an attempt to bypass all oversight systems that have been placed. Secondly, my second request is that as the authorities on police accountability, to state that this effort to procure and expand surveillance without public hearing puts council out of compliance with Metro law. Passing this MOU, even while amended, will still include Exhibit A. And that potentially puts this resolution and that deliberative body subject to future court action to nullify it, since its purpose has already been publicly stated to use a private entity to steer surveillance technology to Metro. I want to make sure that council thoroughly understands from the Community Review Board that the possible legal repercussions that passing this resolution or even an amended resolution might bring, and the negative attention that comes along with it. Thirdly and lastly, I'm asking the Community Review Board to state to Council the dangers of building a privatized surveillance system in which surveillance tools can be informally shared with Metro without oversight, especially due to the recently passed Tennessee Information Protection Act, which protects the rights of private organizations to not be sued if they share their surveillance data that they privately collected with government agencies. To wrap this up, before last Public Health and Finance meeting, the mayor's office laid out a fact sheet fact sheet in quotation marks that repeatedly contradicted every document publicly available for review. This fact sheet dominated committee conversation as council members repeatedly asked questions about talking points that are unfortunately irrelevant to the actual documents that they will be voting on. Unfortunately, the mayor's office is attempting to capitalize on confusion by asking council to sidestep legally required processes, fast-track surveillance, and call it oversight. As it is unlikely that accurate information will emerge from the mayor's office within the next day or even during this whole consideration process, I am here to ask the CRB to clarify for City Council the legal and ethical implications of their current course of action. Council has been intentionally disempowered from using their oversight capacity to provide checks and balances on the mayor's office. I'm asking for a strong community review board to assert themselves in the system of balances, to intervene and show Metro what community review really looks like.
I appreciate that report, and I'm sorry it came to this end. Had I known you had that kind of information, you could have had the beginning of this meeting. But before you leave, I would like to get your name and your phone number because we will talk with you at a later date. All right. Anybody else heard him come in? Okay. Let's, before we end this meeting, I would like to say that, your new business, yeah.
Okay, do you have something to say? Because I have some things to say.
This has something to do with new business. Anyway, I will not be here in January. This is my last meeting. And on these committees, I'm the only one on the nomination committee, so Brown is the first president. So I'm going to pass it on to Brown to handle an election in January. We want to take care of that before we leave. We were supposed to have an election this month, but it has not been done. So anybody interested to run for office, make sure you send it to Jill, email to Jill so they can put it on the ballot and can vote on it. We want to have all that straight and not guess up on it.
Okay. Well, your last meeting, and we wanted to make certain that I want to start with Alicia because we didn't get to give her anything. For your, all right, we wanted to present you with this token of appreciation for the work that you've done and brought us through a tumultuous time. I don't know how we made it without you, your work, your mentorship. We appreciate you. And so this is an award from the CRB. It says Alicia Haddock, Board Chair 2023 to 2024, presented in honor of your outstanding tenure as Chairperson of the Nashville's Community Review Board. Thank you for your commitment to justice, accountability, transparency, and making Nashville a safer place for every community. Your voice, our mission. Thank you. We're going to give you your flowers while you're here.
Hey,
okay, so we thank you.
Thank you.
And then here's just another little token. So we appreciate you. God bless you
so much.
in your next endeavors. Okay, okay. All right. Mr. Holloway, we wanted to thank you so much for the work that you've done this last year. I know you've always made yourself available to us, to me, checking in all the time. And we know that we know, number one, that you are a Sigma before anything else. All right. So we wanted to make sure you had this beautiful poinsettia. We also have the same award. So if you could, I can give it to you. This is for your board chair tenure. It says Walter L. Holloway, Board Chair 2024-2025, presented in honor of your outstanding tenure as Chairperson of the Nashville Community Review Board. Thank you for your commitment to justice, your accountability, transparency, and making Nashville a safer place for every community.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. We appreciate you.
All right.
All right, there you go. I got you down in blue. I know you like blue, so we got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right, thank you. We're gonna miss you all, but I know you're not far. So we know we can always call you. And you know you're welcome to come back to a meeting.
Okay. So at this time, I appreciate everything, and it's been a joy working with you. And I'm just a phone call away. Wish y'all the best of luck, and if anything I can do, I know I'm usually at the Y. You can catch me at the Y. And a lot of retirees hang around there, you know. So they vote regularly. We make sure they vote.
Okay.
And so if anything you need, my support, I would do whatever I can. Thank you so much. We will take a motion to adjourn.
Can I just say my little goodbyes?
Go ahead.
Okay. Because this has been one of the most fulfilling assignments that I've had in my life in terms of justice work and the ongoing work of policing communities that often are left out, left behind, unheard, unseen. And I just want to say thank you to the staff of the COB, the NCRB, because your work does not go unseen. We see you. We are standing behind you. We are championing you. If it were not for the staff of the CRB, Nashville would not be as far as we are in terms of policing and the work of accountability and transparency in Nashville. And Frank, you're included in this as well, because it's not easy. This is a work that started a long time ago. And so I hope the city understands the importance of the Nashville Community Review Board and how important this work truly, truly is, and how hard it is. Because everyone has their feelings about feeling safe, but also feeling seen. And Walter, has been a pleasure serving on this board with you, getting to know you. I know exactly where you are, and our work is not finished. It may have come to an end on this board, but we're just beginning in terms of where this city is going. And so right before we leave, Walter, I think we did have 1 3-minute something to say about new business, if I'm not mistaken. Give us 3 minutes, I'm sure. Okay. So new business.
I want to say thank you for that very informative public comment. Thank you to my colleagues who are rolling off the board. Did want to make people, the community, aware that the city council meets tomorrow at 6:30 to talk about the issue that was raised in public comment. And I urge people to come and be a part of that, to write to your city council person, just because I've experienced that there are a lot of people in the community that don't even know that this thing is happening. And I have personal concerns. My colleague here, we work with organizations that have concerns. And my question is, as a board, hearing the ask of us as a board, what are we within the law? What can we do?
Certainly put me on the spot there. You know, our mandate was mentioned. and that's to assist and cooperate in developing policies that increase safety, and I forget the exact words. I wish I had them in front of me. But to that end, we could certainly be a voice and weigh in and represent the same community sentiment that we try to represent. I'm not sure if this board has particular power to do anything other than raise awareness about our position, and I'm open to be told otherwise and to be an instrument in whatever this board decides to do regarding this issue.
Well, can I say a few things? You know, we have always been a voice for the community as it pertains to surveillance. We did that with the license plate readers. We've done that with Fusus technology, raising awareness that these things are happening, and some of the issues that were kind of laid at our footsteps from people in the community who were concerned about this. I recently received a call just a few days ago from someone in leadership in the immigrant community who was appalled and outraged that our city leadership was thinking about or even doing any of these things, especially in the light of what's happening across this nation as it pertains to immigrant populations. You know, and this, you know, from the Muslim community, from, you know, the Turkish community, these calls come to us and, you know, and people are afraid. They're even afraid to make regular criminal complaints. So when you have a person who is afraid to go to the police to file a criminal complaint because they have been assaulted, where are we as a city when we don't speak up for people who cannot speak up for themselves? And so I understand, I'm not, you know, I listen to, you know, the public comment. I've been made aware of this, you know, since, you know, I guess it's been since December the 4th is when I first learned about this. And so I know that our ability to provide oversight or whatever may not be as clear as it was in the past. I do feel strongly that any type of surveillance in our city to this nature, where if I did my own research, our team is working on it now, when they are not producing reports and information so that we can be able to audit, to track, to provide accountability, whether it be our agency or any other agency, I'm concerned about people's constitutional rights being trampled upon. And what happens to people, we have seen people across this city, in our own city, disappear. And so without even having checks and balances in these two new technologies, I don't remember if it's whatever, Lionheart or whatever the other one is. The fact that they're not producing reports, they don't have any information to track this technology, it's very concerning to me. And we know for certain that people in our own neighborhoods have disappeared and their families still don't know where they are. And so, you know, they can't protect us, you know, I'm sorry, they can't protect the information and say that they're not going to share it, because they will share it, because there's no way to track that they're sharing it anyway. And so I don't know how we would weigh in, but I do think that this is a serious public safety issue in Nashville.
Just one more, and I agree with the sentiments. I do think, you know, being chair while we had to transition to the Community Review Board, not only was it, you know, going from the Oversight Board to the Review Board was a hard thing, but it's one thing that we have, and it is the ability to research, it is the ability to audit, it is the ability to provide guidance to the community and be a voice for those who don't, for the voiceless, or for those who are most vulnerable and who will be impacted negatively by this MOU that we know so little about. And so I would recommend that that the CRB be involved. at a base level of having the ability to audit what we have, number one, downtown in general, but then in terms of how we track this information, if it becomes so that the CRB be involved in this as well.
And thank you for that. And and on a point that I don't think that we have talked about is it's moving very fast, right? Like within 2 weeks, we're having this. Like we're talking about some powerful surveillance without any real public conversations about. And I think it should be paused until we get more information. And what's the rush? The money, they have already received the funding. If you try to figure out all the stuff that's happening, right? And I may not be that well versed because I was a little confused about the two different entities. But at the end of the day, the money is already out there and allocated. So I think that, taking a pause, and I don't know if this would be a letter from the CRB, just voicing our concerns about it in support of, pausing and letting the public weigh in on this. So that would be my suggestion, that we write a letter.
I make a motion that we write a letter as a board, penned by our chair, our outgoing chairperson, Chair Walter Holloway, for the NDP mayor's MOU.
Second.
You heard the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Any more new business? Get a motion to adjourn.
I motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.